Thank you, Neelam ji, for joining us for an IANS interview, a digital interview. I'm sure you must be tired of all interviews by now. So many digital interactions happening nowadays.
I know they are, but I'm flattered that I'm asked to do them.
Thank you. Thank you. The pleasure is all ours. So, Neelam ji, tell me a little about how Home Alone, your latest production, was conceived.
Well, it's got, we still haven't decided on a name. We're still in the process. I
Right.
think some kind of graph has emerged. So we're
Okay.
just pulling out other things. Actually, I got a phone call from Arundhati Nag, a
Right.
message actually,
The theatre director.
who runs the Ranga Shankara in Bangalore.
Ji.
So she said, why don't you do something which is about 40 minutes, which we can then stream on Zoom, and
Okay.
maybe when things open up,
Right.
have physical performances. So
Okay.
I said, okay, it sounds like a good idea. Why not?
Right.
So then she told me that she's asked Abhishek Majumdar to do also something similar.
Okay.
And it's left to what we decide
Right.
we wish to do. So I looked at some short stories, some texts, because the text, as you know, the way I work is the text becomes a starting point to trigger off many other things that one is engaged in. But this time it was like you can't escape the space we are in. I
Right.
do know that Abhishek Majumdar is doing Desdemona and Othello,
Right.
one part of their conversation in different ways. That
Mhm.
how the same text done by the same director can be done in multiple ways. So I found that quite an interesting concept.
Right.
Um, so then, Rocky is here, Vansh
Okay.
Bhardwaj,
Ji.
who's worked with me for many, many years.
Mhm.
He was in Bombay, but because of the virus, he didn't want to be alone in his flat. So he
Right.
decided to come to Chandigarh, which is where his family lives.
Okay.
So I thought, Rocky's here, such a wonderful actor.
Mhm.
It's a good opportunity for us to explore something together.
Mhm.
So we started on this point and that thought and this idea, but ultimately you can't escape the times that you're passing through,
Right.
and the fears and the uncertainties, the vulnerabilities, the possibilities, how it is viewed, where do we find human information, how do we deal with it? All these issues which we are all engaged with
Right.
became the raw material for the work that we have done.
Okay. Okay. So you've explored text by Chekhov and Manto, but essentially this is just the base. It would be an improvisational performance, which you mostly do. So could you add a little to that?
Well, I think we started off with Chekhov and Monto, but now there's no Chekhov and no Monto.
Okay.
It's just to do with an idea which was planted and the idea grew.
Right.
It grew in terms of the physical space that we created in which the actor was or the character was placed. What do you do? We use things like numbers and counting
Yeah.
and made that almost into a leitmotif, almost into like a mantra.
Right.
So actually, it is just to do with the only Yesterday, my son Kabir asked me, "Who is this character who's in his room, 10 foot by 10 foot room?" I
Right.
said, that we haven't thought of. So I
Mhm.
asked Rocky today. I said, Rocky, who are you? So
Mhm.
he said, I'm an actor, an out of work actor.
Mhm.
So today, whatever he did was the out of work actor who doesn't have his audience, who doesn't have his space, but
Mhm.
makes a burden to his audience,
Right. Right.
makes the wind into the audience,
Mhm.
makes the water into the rain into his audience that he can see by putting his hand outside the window. So
Right.
I personally feel it's a very interesting piece that emerged today.
Mhm.
So I'm glad we're talking today because I have a much more definitive um, idea about where we are moving. So there's storytelling, there's movement, there's depression, there's fatigue, there's a sense, it's a very existentialist space that has been created.
Which is derived from the times we live in right now, the COVID times.
Absolutely. So in a certain way, the times, the whole story has emerged from what each one of us is feeling individually and collectively.
Okay. So I understand you must have been asked this a number of times, but what is it about building a play with the team and not depending on a bound script that fascinates you? You've been doing it for the past 20 years now.
No. The thing is, I started off by working on what you call the well-made play.
Yeah.
With the beginning, a middle, and an end.
Yes.
But even within that, I realized in retrospect, I was tossing it around. I was reassembling, reconstituting the material, which is what I presume every actor does. Or, I beg your pardon, every director does.
Right.
You have, even if you have a bound script, even within that, there's interpretation, there's individual assertion, there's points of view. There is what you are pulling out of the text, because a text becomes a classical text when it contains within multiple stories. There's no singular story. There are many stories within a story. So what is the position you take, and what are the elements that you pull out of that narrative depends upon really your own politics, your own social and political economic, gender position that you're taking. So even within that, there is interpretation.
Right.
But for the last 7-8 years, pre-existing texts do not suit what I'm searching for.
And what are
this is not a judgment.
I mean, by doing the play, you say that the text does not suit what you are searching for.
At this point, since the last 5-6 years, that pre-existing texts do not suit what I'm searching for. Right. This is not a rejection. This is a choice.
Right.
So what we've been doing is, it's not that we've eliminated text. Text is a essential material for creating. I don't do dance movement, physical theater. What I am doing is, it is a narrative-based theater. It does have a story. It does have a development. But how it develops, does it develop in a linear manner, in circularity, in loops, in swirls? That is the choice you make. Right. You might imagine that this kind of way of working is freer, but it's much more difficult, because you never know when to start and where it's going to end, because you've got nothing to hold on to except somewhere your own sense of how you look at the story. So what I do is, the last couple of plays I've done, I've been working very closely with Siddharth Hassan Manto. Right. I've taken sometimes 3 stories and put them together. In fact, I was in Delhi when the NST shut down because of COVID. Yeah. I was doing Antigone by Jean Onnevi and Sophocles, both the versions, and dovetailing it with Toba Tek Singh. Okay. Which is about both of them searching in a graveyard. Right. She goes to the graveyard to search for her brother's body, and he's in a no man's land. So even if you take text, how you kind of manage it, how you how you pull different strands, sometimes completely contradictory strands, separate strands, and kind of weave it into a communicable connection with the actors, with yourself, and hopefully later with the audience, is really something which has been my struggle as an artist.
Right. So, Neelamji, in these times, we are also witnessing that now, art galleries have started opening up with physical exhibitions, and we are going to have the Kochi Biennale. So, what do you foresee for theatre?
Well, I believe I've heard that they've started opening up what you call open air theatres.
Right. Yes.
which is you can perform in a open space.
Yes.
Um, but it's like Andre Gide's The Plague, the book that he wrote on the plague. He said, even when the plague was not existing,
Yeah.
but people who had experienced the plague, the memory of that fear
Yeah.
continuously pursued them while they were opening a cupboard or opening a trunk. There was a sense of that fear.
Right.
So how do we eradicate that fear? Will be the journey that all of us will have to take individually to buy a ticket to go into an auditorium.
Right.
You go to the bank, but there's always a tentativeness. There's always that dodge and not be too near anybody.
Yeah.
Even when you receive money, you're kind of a little unsure about how to put it back into your bag.
Right.
So I think those fears take a long time to be expunged from your psyche, from your system, from your... I mean, how habits get formed in such a short span is a mystery.
Yeah.
It's going to be 6 months of COVID.
Yeah.
But we have already formed a new caste system. It's like a caste system.
Yes.
Koi aata hai, you give water to the postman who comes, or the courier person, he wants to, you give him a cold drink, or somebody comes to your house and you put all your buttons in vinegar water. So lot of new new habits have started coming into play. Maybe one good thing is that we'll become cleaner as a nation, wash our hands before we sit down for a meal.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. And as you said, it's been 6 months now almost. But I can't help asking this, across the world in the West, the governments, the state has done something for the artists, understanding that freelance artists, it's tough for them to support themselves in these times. Now, what we are witnessing is that, so many youngsters from major cities, artists, have gone back to their native places because they can't even afford the rent. So, what are your thoughts on it? I mean,
Well, my thoughts are that it's quite disturbing, because what has sustained everyone during this lockdown? It's
right.
really been music, films, literature. It's really been the arts which has sustained people. And yet to be so cavalier towards the artist
Right.
is just so shocking and so total, to know that your life has no significance. Your contribution in humanizing society or sensitizing society has just been of no value.
Right.
Your own life is devalued by the attitude of the state and the government. Initially, one tried a lot talking to the academies, pleading with them that, money, the budgets have come for your 2020 because by March, budgets come.
Right.
You're not going to call a play as some film actors, or, they've been spending their money calling plays which seem to have some TV star or some television actor, and pay them huge sums of money. That anyway is not going to happen now. So why don't you give that money to young people to do workshops and to do make plays, which they can't do at the present moment, which they will honor once. This is not going to be forever. If the Spanish flu didn't last and the Great Plague didn't last and swine flu didn't last, this will also ease out.
Yeah.
But it was like speaking to people who are deaf, blind, and dumb. They were least interested. It was almost like they were not acknowledging that artists existed, and artists came under non-essential items.
Yes.
But yet, when you study civilization, if you're an anthropologist or an archaeologist, you study lost civilizations through artifacts.
Right.
Through pottery, through utensils, through things that you dig out, whether it is
Hmm.
Um, you know, from Mihijandaro, the dancing girl, or the
Yeah.
stage, or the beast, or whatever, and yet you are so, or the bull, but you're so indifferent to
Hmm.
the real plight of the artist.
Hmm.
It's quite sad.
Hmm.
I think people spoke to the local MP, they spoke to the
Hmm.
advisor. I wrote to the advisor of the city. No cognition, no
Hmm.
response.
Hmm.
So it's like your entire life has been trashed.
Yes, I understand. And how did the lockdown treat you personally as a theater artist, as somebody who cannot work and is at home? So, what was going on in the mind?
As, so can't I also, in fact, I also felt that I'd reached that stage in my life, and I was quite happy to say, I've done my life work. You know, I've done lots of productions, I've taught. I'm quite happy to just do nothing.
Hmm. Hmm.
I'm not, I, in terms of my 40 years of being in theater,
Hmm.
I'm not talking about age at all, but I just feel I'd reached a point when I felt like my life's work. I was happy, maybe taking a few classes here, but the whole race
Yes.
had ceased to exist within me.
Hmm.
I didn't feel to be in every festival or to be all over the place, which perhaps you feel in your 30s, 40s, and even in your 50s. In your
Right.
60s, you've kind of done all that.
Yes.
Uh, मिल जाए तो ठीक है, ना मिले तो कोई no sense of loss.
Right.
Uh, but I think there's been a lot of angst,
Hmm.
and the angst really comes from seeing thousands of people walking home,
Yeah.
brutalized by the system, hungry,
Hmm.
jobless,
Yes.
the loss of hope, I can say.
Hmm.
You know, no matter how savage the times are,
Hmm.
even the very fact that you're performing the savage times
Yes.
has already shown the existence
Hmm.
of hope.
Hmm.
But I think what is happening now, that sense of hope seems to
Hmm.
have died down
Right.
by the winds that are blowing around
Hmm.
us. Um, I feel, what have I done to have food on my table and a roof over my head
Hmm.
when my fellow brethren
Hmm.
are in such a disturbed and such a terrifying space?
Hmm.
So I cannot separate my life from the life of the people around me. I
Hmm.
don't want to sound like a bleeding heart idiot, but nevertheless,
Hmm.
I think my life is linked with many lives.
Hmm.
Each life is linked. We are part of a chain.
Right.
So that has been quite disturbing.
Hmm.
It's suddenly like I feel that the COVID has brought out the worst in people.
Hmm.
The crust of civilization
Hmm.
is very thin.
Hmm.
The swamp exists as much as the light.
Hmm. Hmm.
Uh, Today you see more the swamp than the light.
Hmm.
So that is when, whether it is the Riya Chakravarti case,
Yeah.
whether it is the witch hunt, it reminds me of the Crucible, uh, Arthur Miller's The Crucible, where
Hmm.
हाथ धो के, तुसी पीछे पै जाते हो. Like
Right.
I was in fact just thinking that if it wasn't ganja, it would have been some traffic violation
True.
that had been done a
Hmm.
couple of years ago. It's almost like the collective uh, consciousness has to be assuaged by making a person a victim.
Hmm.
It's terrifying.
Hmm.
I find it quite terrifying that how perfectly decent and nice people
Hmm.
that you like and people that you know
Yeah.
can have such a uh, savage or brutal streak within them,
Hmm.
where they are okay with something like this happening.
Hmm. Hmm.
So yeah, it's been a time. It's been a time of sadness. It's been a time of healing for me
Hmm. Hmm.
because it has been a time of finding out that I can be alone.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it's been a complex time
Okay.
with so there is no single response because there's no single emotion that
Right.
one has dealt with.
Right. Perfect. Thank you so much for your time. As always, it's been such a pleasure talking to you, and great luck
Thank
for
you.
your production. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
See you soon.